So in the previous lesson, we were working with the Azure portal to do policies, which is perfectly fine. But for the sake of this exam, and for the sake of our jobs as administrators, we also want to understand how it works within Bash and within CLI, or within PowerShell. So let's do this within the Cloud Shell. So you'll see the greater than sign and the underscore. That will open us up to Cloud Shell. When you click it, Microsoft instantiates a Cloud Shell for us. It's going to take a second. Now, if you've never done this before, the first time you create a Cloud Shell, it's going to ask you to create a storage account. And so you're going to have to go through that process of creating a storage account. That's going to take a few minutes. So now we have a PowerShell Cloud Shell running. Now, there is also the Bash option, which is the CLI. We're going to do PowerShell to start, and then we're going to do the Bash after. Now, looking at the various Azure documentations, one thing that we need to do is we need to register our account against the policy insights provider. So we're going to go to this register-Azure RM resource provider commandlet, and then it's going to add policy insights. So I'll go back to my Cloud Shell, and if I said shift insert, it's going to paste it there, and I'm going to hit enter. And so this is going to allow me to run policy commands within PowerShell, and this is linked to my account, so that's registered as a provider. Now, going back to the quick start here, there are obviously a number of commands that we can do to create a policy or identify this, etc. I'm going to I have some commands that I'm ready to go. The two commands that we're concerned with is the creating a policy definition and then assigning that policy definition to our account. So I'm going to paste this here, but then I'll explain it to you. Basically, the new -Azure RM policy definition commandlet is going to go out to GitHub and pull down the policy and the JSON file for parameters. This is very similar to ARM templates. So if we go into GitHub, you've got the Azure account, and then you've got Azure-policy as the repository, and we can see that the built-in policies have various folders here, and then we've got this README. You've got the policy itself written as a JSON document, and then the parameters is what you pass into it, right? So if I go into the parameters file, we can see that it takes the tag name and the tag value as parameters. Okay, so go back to my Cloud Shell account. So I've basically created my own policy called apply default tag value, give it a description and a name, and it just points to GitHub, and that's been created. If I go $definition, I can see it thrown back to me that I have a resource ID and a resource name, etc. This is a custom policy based on GitHub. Okay. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to assign this policy to our account. So I'm going to use the new Azure RM policy assignment commandlet, give it a name. Now, as for scope, when you're creating a policy within the portal, you can assign it to your entire account at the subscription level, or you can assign it to specific resource groups. And so this scope is the fully qualified name. This happens to be my subscription level. I created a tag name and tag value. Remember, we saw this in GitHub as being the parameters. And so I'm going to say billing code and then give it this thing. And we're going to use the policy that we just created as $definition. And then if I say assignment, I can see this thrown back to me as the policy is in effect. Okay, if I was to close this, go into here, go into policy, then we can see that AZSJD assign, which I just created using PowerShell, is already associated with our account. Okay, I'm going to delete the assignment, and I'm also going to delete the definition. If we go in the definitions section, I want to see custom definitions, and you can see that I created a custom definition based on the built-in policy, so it's a bit redundant, but that's fine. I can say delete definition as well. So that's how you would create policies using PowerShell. Now, if we go back into the Cloud Shell and we switch over from PowerShell into Bash, confirm. Now, Bash is, the commands in Bash are almost translatable from PowerShell. So I'm going to say AZ policy definition create, and basically it's the same values that I did for PowerShell. So this is going to create the definition. We gave it a name, apply default tag value. And so command line has returned back. Let's see if there's a status in here among all of this. Well, anyways, it's been created. We've got the object back as it's been created. So now that we defined the policy, let's make the assignment. So it's going to be AZ policy create, and we're going to use the AZSJD assign as the name, just like we did with PowerShell. The scope is going to be my subscription. I'm going to copy the subscription ID in here. It's not just the subscription ID, it's also /subscriptions. There's a naming structure here. And the policy that I want to assign was called apply. Now, if I hit the tab key, this should autofill. It's going to try to autofill. I guess it didn't in this case. So apply default value. And we're going to need to pass the tag name and the tag value as parameters. And it's minus params. Now, this took a little bit of work to figure it out, but we have to create the parameters as a JSON string. So I'm going to paste in that format. So it's got the tag name and the tag value, and we sort of have to use a value structure for each of those. So if I submit this, oh, missed the word. AZ policy assignment create. And so we are at the same ending as the PowerShell example. If I go back up to assignments and I refresh, then I've got my policy back added. The last thing I want to do is clean up what I just did, right? So I didn't do that for the PowerShell, but see, the tab worked in that case. So AZ policy assignment delete, and then the policy that I just created will get removed. And if I said AZ policy definition delete, then the definition of apply default tag value should get deleted. So if I go back to the portal, policy is now gone again. So that's how you use PowerShell and command line to do this policy stuff.